I'm worried about China, and I want to talk to my next guest about the specifics of what I'm worried about. Retired Lieutenant Colonel James Carafano, the Vice President of National Security and Foreign Policy of the Heritage Foundation. Colonel, I hear a lot of tough talk about China, about what we're going to do here, what we're going to do there. We're going to stop this, and we're never going to deal with China again. And China's on the outs. And boy, do I have about zero faith that America and the rest of the world is going to actually go through with that. Am I wrong?
I think you're wrong, but I also think you're right. Look, what we're not going to do is we're not going to do something radically different. It's like we're just going to stop dealing with. That's not going to happen because look at what we're facing. We've got to get the American economy back up and running, and we have to deal with China, and we have to deal with both. So the reality is look, the number one priority now is to get the American economy moving, get people back to work. All right. We're going to have to fix the cars that's going down the street. I do think there are things we can do to change our relationship with China. Recently did a piece on Fox News, and I outlined like three of them, big things. One is transparency. This is something we really haven't done before. If we bring more transparency to what China's doing, both domestically and foreign policy, the corruption, the human slavery, all this other stuff we either ignored or didn't know, the more transparency we bring, the more people are going to want to, and I think we'll be forced to because the marketplace will want to make better decisions about dealing with China. I think that's a huge game changer. The second thing is I hear a lot of people say, what can we do to force people not to do business in China? And what I want to do is turn that question on its head. Why can't people do business here? Let's look at ourselves at the federal, state, and local level, whether it's red tape or taxes or whatever, and say, why let's take away every obstacle for people who want to do business in the United States. I think that'll make a huge difference. And the third thing is let's be realistic. This notion that we're just going to make everything here, that's not realistic. I mean, we're a global country, deal with all kinds of people, but we don't have to buy stuff from China. We could buy stuff from our friends and people that actually like us and don't steal our intellectual property and don't try to rip us off. So if you look, for example, if you put together, say, India, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, those are all countries that like us. Together, they're an industrial base that's every bit as inexpensive and every bit as large and capable as China. So we have other options. People have to get smarter about assuming that China's the only game in town because it's really not.
Colonel, as far as making things here, I agree with you, but isn't a major obstacle to companies moving back here is the fact that they can get their slave labor in China and they can't get slave labor here?
Well, I think that's where all these pieces come together. I think the more transparency we bring to how Chinese operate, the more companies have to take that into account in their business decisions and their risk management. And I think we're already seeing people doing that. I mean, the answer to the question is, yeah, people are going to move. We're already seeing some of those supply chains move. Some of them are coming back to the United States. Some of them are going to other places like Mexico. So I think that we're already going in that direction because people recognize that it's more than just about how cheap is the thing I buy from China. There are questions about the integrity of my company. There are questions about intellectual property theft. There are questions about espionage. There are questions about cheating, about corruption. These are all things that companies are going to have to weigh when they decide to do business. And dependability. We just recently saw a veiled threat from the Chinese government to the people of Australia that says, well, if you guys criticize us, maybe we just won't buy anything Australian anymore. That's unbelievable. We just saw an example of the European Union that was preparing to put out a report on disinformation and the spread of the coronavirus. But because of pressure from the Chinese government in Beijing, they softened the criticisms of China. If Europe keeps doing that, it's going to wind up being a suburb of Beijing.
Are they going to keep doing that? Because look, even if let's make a big assumption, and this is a big one. Let's assume Donald Trump gets reelected. Let's assume he's going to keep the pressure on China. If all the rest of the world keeps buying cheap Chinese crap, then that's not going to stop China.
I think we are already starting to see some changes. I'll give you a couple of examples. One is the United Kingdom. which recently made a really bad decision that they were going to allow Huawei, the Chinese telecom company, to build about 30% of their 5G backbone. That's their new telecom backbones. Even though a lot of people point out some incredible security concerns and vulnerabilities to this, but it was just cheap. I think there's a large expectation that the British government's going to change that decision, in large part because of the Chinese response to COVID-19. So that's a big deal. And if the British make that, that's a big sign of changes in Europe. I think Italy's another example. I think there's a lot of anger about doing business with China and Italy. I'll tell you, the most interesting thing I saw, which was a French, can't tell you the country, a representative of a country who said to me, he says, look, for years what we've all been doing is individually chasing China around and all trying to get a sweetheart deal with China. And what we found is the Chinese have played all of us. They've played us off against each other. They've used that to punish us, undermine us, manipulate us, because that's got to stop. And I think if anything, this recent EU report, which was pushed by a handful of countries, which were heavily pressured by the Chinese, I think that's the kind of warning sign that Europeans as a whole are going to start to take really seriously, recognizing that if we don't do something about this, we're going to wake up one day and be a suburb of Beijing.
Colonel, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. I appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for having me.